What if I told you there was a full touchscreen phone, no keyboard, no stylus, sleek black glass that beat the iPhone to market by months? Not a prototype, not a rumor, a phone you could actually walk into a store and buy. I'm your guide to the stuff tech forgot, and the year is 2007, and the device is the LG Prada. Yeah, the fashion house, not a typo. Here's the thing nobody remembers. Before Steve Jobs stood on that stage in January 2007 and called the iPhone a revolutionary product, LG had already shown off the Prada phone in December 2006. Full touchscreen, capacitive glass, no stylus jabbing at tiny buttons like you were performing surgery. At a time when smartphone mostly meant a BlackBerry with a keyboard the size of a postage stamp, LG walked in wearing a tuxedo and said, "Watch this." They didn't do it alone either. LG partnered directly with Prada, actual Milan fashion house Prada, to design the thing. Not slap a logo on it, design it. The packaging, the interface icons, even the box it came in looked like it belonged on a boutique shelf, not an electronics aisle. This was LG trying to prove a phone could be a fashion object first and a phone second, in an era when designer tech barely existed as a category. So why isn't this the phone everyone talks about? Why did one black rectangle from Cupertino eat the entire cultural memory of touchscreen phones, while this one, earlier, arguably just as bold, got filed under trivia questions? That's the story, and it's messier and more human than you'd think. Let's start with the problem LG was actually trying to solve, because it wasn't "let's beat Apple." Nobody at LG in 2006 was racing a phone that didn't exist yet. The question LG was asking was simpler and honestly a little more interesting. Can a phone be jewelry? Can it be something you want people to see you holding, not just something you use? Flip phones had gotten as small and shiny as they were going to get. Razr had already proven thin and glossy sold. LG's bet was that the next step wasn't smaller, it was more elegant. Fewer buttons, more glass, less device, more object. Now picture holding it next to the phone everyone actually had in their pocket that year, something like a Motorola Razr or a Nokia Candy Bar. Those phones were all buttons, all plastic, all function. The Prada was a slab of black, touch-sensitive glass with a thin strip of actual buttons underneath, almost apologetically small, like LG was saying, "Fine, you can have 3 buttons, but that's it." The screen used capacitive touch, the same basic technology your phone uses today, at a time when most touchscreens on the market were resistive, meaning you pressed them like a bruise, often with a little plastic stick. LG's screen responded to a fingertip. That's not a small detail. That's the whole difference between gadget with a touchscreen bolted on and phone designed around touch. And credit where it's due, the things this phone got right were genuinely ahead of their time. The minimalist home screen, the idea that icons should be touchable, not just menu items you scroll to with a directional pad. The materials felt expensive because they were expensive. Real attention went into the finish, not just the spec sheet. It also had a camera that punched above its price class for the era, and a media player interface clearly built for someone who wanted to feel a phone, not just operate it. Quick aside, and I'll keep it short, I have a personal grudge against phones from this era that put the volume buttons somewhere your palm naturally rests, so you're constantly muting your own ringer by accident. The Prada does this. Nobody's perfect. And LG leaned all the way into the lifestyle pitch. Fashion on your wrist, in your pocket. Touch to text, glide to browse. A phone that matched your jacket, not just your carrier plan. Style before spec sheet. It was less, "Here's what this phone does," and more, "Here's who you'll be seen as while holding it." And that messaging, love it or hate it, was doing something genuinely new for the category. But, and you can already feel this coming, a beautiful surface only gets you so far. because underneath that gorgeous glass, there was a phone running software that, let's just say, wasn't quite ready to carry the weight of the hardware's ambition. And that gap between what the Prada looked like it could do and what it actually let you do is exactly where this story starts to turn. Now, here's the thing I didn't mention yet, because I wanted you to fall for this phone the way people did in showrooms in 2006. The product looked like the future. Using it for more than 5 minutes felt like the present, and a slightly clunky present at that. The intended experience was effortless touch computing. The real-world experience was a phone that still leaned on a fairly basic feature phone operating system underneath all that glass. There was no real app ecosystem to speak of, because in 2006, the concept of apps as we know them basically didn't exist yet. Web browsing was slow and cramped by today's standards, and honestly by the standards of what was coming just months later. Typing anything longer than a text message on that touchscreen was a small trial by fire, since there was no proper on-screen keyboard the way we'd recognize one now. You were tapping through the same layered menu logic that every other phone of that era used. It just happened to be wrapped in nicer glass. And that's really the honest version of why this thing didn't take over the world. It wasn't a failure of ambition. LG absolutely nailed the "what could a touchscreen phone feel like" question. What they hadn't solved, because almost nobody had yet, was what should a touchscreen phone software actually be? Apple's answer, a few months later, was to build an entirely new operating system, a real browser, and a genuine multi-touch interface from the ground up. LG's answer was closer to take our existing phone software and give it a beautiful new face. One of those approaches ages into an industry, the other ages into a very good-looking museum piece. There's also the plain business math. Pricing put it firmly in premium territory, sold through fashion-adjacent marketing rather than the carrier-subsidized mass-market push that made phones like the Razr ubiquitous. It was positioned more like a limited accessory than infrastructure for your entire digital life, because at the time, nobody was building a phone as infrastructure for your entire digital life. That idea didn't fully exist yet either. So the flaw existed because the whole industry hadn't figured out yet that hardware and software needed to evolve together as one idea, not one gorgeous shell wrapped around old guts. LG built the shell of the future and stuffed it with the operating logic of the past, which, to be fair, is a very on-brand move for a company that also, around this same era, put a full keyboard on a phone shaped like a boombox. Not every swing was going to connect. So where does the LG Prada rank in the Museum of Forgotten Tech? Honestly, near the top of the right idea, wrong decade shelf. It's not a punchline. It's not a Zune. It's a phone that looked at the entire category and said, this can be more elegant than this, months before anyone else said it louder and better. That's not nothing. That's a company that saw the door before it knew how to walk through it. Remember how we opened? A phone that beat the iPhone to market, full glass, no stylus, and got erased from the story anyway? That's the whole tragedy and the whole charm of it in one sentence. Being first isn't the same as being remembered. Being remembered takes more than a good-looking screen. It takes the whole system behind it actually working the way the screen promises. And here's the through line, because there always is one on this channel. Every phone you've owned since, the capacitive glass under your thumb right now, the idea that a phone should feel less like a tool and more like a personal object, even the entire concept of tech meets fashion collaborations that pop up every few years. Some sliver of that traces back to a black slab with a Milan fashion house's name etched into it. LG didn't win that round, but they asked a question the entire industry eventually had to answer. The Prada didn't lose because it was wrong. It lost because it arrived at the party one operating system too early. If you owned one of these, or if you remember seeing it in a store window and having no idea what you were looking at, tell me about it in the comments, and let me know what forgotten phone, gadget, or almost deserves the next episode. There's no shortage of glorious dead ends in this industry.